What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Modified Rides podcast. Today, I have someone on that has a little show up in the Northeast. You may have heard of it, you may not have. You probably have if you're anything in the truck scene. Today, we have Mark. I guess Wickline is how you pronounce it from it.
Exactly how you pronounce it.
So, what's going on, man? Up there chasing drones around every night? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, we try. I mean, luckily we've had some rain, so they haven't been too active. But yeah, I mean, we've had some SUV sized small SUV sized drones flying around the area a lot lately.
So, you live in Atlantic City?
I live right in Atlantic City. I live in the inlet. Yes, sir.
So the news is right. They've actually had, like, what they're showing on the news isn't exaggeration. Like, you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, we've seen it. Where I live, like I said, I live in the inlet. So I have the ocean about a block in front of my house and the bay a block in back of my house. And right in front of my house where the ocean is, we have a pier, little pier, fishing pier. And we go out there at night and they fly in and they fly right over us, and they've been hovering around the city and stuff like that. It's been wild. There's a lot of questions and obviously conspiracy theories people talk about, but it's wild. I would just wish we all kind of knew a little bit better exactly what was going on.
So since you've seen firsthand, is your expert opinion, is it government or is it aliens? I'm hoping it's aliens.
I wish it was aliens at this point. I was having this conversation the other night. I was like, I wish they would just come here and take me and I'd be going. But I definitely think it's I can't say if it's definitely government, but it's definitely human based. The way that it's all set up, and it's wild. They're about 4 feet wide and about 6 foot in length.
That's crazy.
So they're pretty. I've never seen a drone that big before. It's just, it was a lot heavier in the beginning, and now it's kind of slowed down as far as the amount of drones that you see. They're getting higher. They're getting very close to airplanes out this way now. I just watched a guy from YouTube, his video. He was out here. He took a charter out into the water, and just the things, and seeing them fly from the water to the Atlantic City skyline was just wild.
So were you throwing Atlantic City truck meet flyers at them as they went by, or what was you?
Flyers, T-shirts, hats, everything I could. You know what I mean?
Drone class next year, like what are we doing?
I'm working on it, but because we're on an old airfield, the FAA is kind of a little shaky right now. They've already tried no flight zones around the area, and it's not working out too well for them.
Wow. So let's get back into the real reason. We're not here to discuss drones, even though that is pretty fun to deal with.
It's interesting.
So how did you get, with you being tied into the show side of our industry? How did you get tied into custom vehicles as a kid?
So as a kid growing up, my friend Brian Everett, I can remember when I was 13 years old. My friend Brian Everett was a little bit older than me, and back then it was more all about audio sound. IASCA,
Yep.
International Sound Challenge Association. So it was, he had a Chevette, and he was working on that. And I mean, back in the day, it didn't matter what your Chevette looked like, as long as it was bulletproof and they can soundproof the heck out of it. They were just going for decibels, right?
Chevette.
So yeah, and it was something that I kind of like picked up from him and got involved with. And unfortunately, when we were 14 years old, Brian and two of his buddies stole a vehicle and came and picked me up, and we went for a little joyride in this. It was a Ford Escort station wagon they stole from a Ford dealership, and we got into a one-car accident, split the car in half, and I was the only one who survived the accident. Oh, and kind of from there on, I vowed to myself that I would keep what he loved alive. And that's when I really got into really stereos is where I started out at. Not knowing anything about them, but I love, my sister had a car. I installed a radio in her car, and I got really involved in stuff. And as I got older, I got to meet the guys that owned car stereo shops by me, and started hanging out with them a lot more, and then working at their shops as a grunt worker, sweeping the showroom, and then luckily my mentor, my hero, my father, who passed, he he was a salesman. My father could sell ice to an Eskimo, and he really taught me a lot. He was vice president at Mack Trucks,
Okay.
and he taught me a lot about uh, presentation, personality, clean cut, speaking to people, always being very mindful of everything. And I started getting into sales and kind of worked my way out of building on anything. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not very mechanically savvy. But I really got into sales, and I crushed it, and I started doing really good, and I started working for these shops, um and then I started getting friends that were like, "Hey man, you know how to talk to people. Help us get some sponsors." All right, well, challenge is accepted.
And
Let's work
when
on it.
was this? Like, how long ago was this?
So, getting into everything, obviously 14, I'm 46 right now. But getting really mainly into starting to help with sponsorship stuff was probably about 22 years old, 23 years old. So let's say about 24 years ago.
That seems about the time I really dove into it hard, I guess you'd say.
Yep, and that's when I met Miles Kovacs and John Ramos. At the time, it was Dub Magazine. They were only about a year old. I met them at SummerSlam in July 4th weekend in Englishtown, New Jersey. Was my first encounter with them, and then I did a lot of work with Funkmaster Flex when he did his car series,
Oh yeah.
and I was at his Sayreville, New Jersey show, and Miles was there, and I was talking to Flex at the show, and we were going over a couple things, and Miles came up and said, "Man, you hire just about anybody here now, don't you?" And that's when me and Miles talked, and kind of that's when I kind of really started doing some work with them, pretty much as a freelance guy, and was helping them out for the better part of 20 years, and as it went from Dub to TIS, and excuse me, as it went from Dub to TIS, I kind of transitioned and have been very loyal to the brands that they have and always will be. Um, they have supported me. They've been through everything with me, from my daughter being born and them sending me stuff for her that was on the registry, and me going through life, right?
Yeah.
Being there to talk to me and walk me through life, and as well as me losing my father, and now Atlantic City. I mean, when Atlantic City was born, and there was no questions. I was on the phone with them the night we put it together, and they were like, "We got you."
Well, it's like Miles is just that kind of person, because I remember anytime I take my daughter to one of the dub shows or something, I was there shooting the show. He'd always stop and talk to her about cheerleading, because his daughter was a couple years older than mine, and my daughter actually followed her on Instagram or whatever before she ever knew that that's who her dad was. And
Oh wow.
they would always talk about cheerleading and stuff, like, "Oh, how's cheer going?" and stuff. And my daughter
Hmm.
would always be like, "Well, how did he remember that?" I'm like, "That's just who Miles is. That's."
Yeah, he's definitely he remembers everything. That's one thing I will say about that man.
I got him coming on the podcast, but you know as well as I do, his schedule's a little more packed than both of ours put together, I think.
For sure, for sure.
Like,
As it should be for him, though.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I started. We talked before we come on. I started shooting for him, 20 years ago or so. I just happened to link up with him at a show, and when Rich was running the magazine, and Rich sent me a couple places to shoot some stuff, and then it just ever since then we've just had that relationship. It was always cool because, like, I'd go backstage, get on stage, and do photos of the performers, and you'd have like all these what I would consider big time people at the time were like, "How are you getting to go back here?" I'm like, "I have the
Right.
wristband that says I can."
Yeah, exact. I got those credentials, and that's what it was back in the day. It was like, if you got this, you got gold. You know
Well,
what I
it's like
mean?
his main security guard. What was his name? The guy passed away a year or two ago.
Oh, I know exactly who you're the big dude.
Yeah,
I know exactly who you're
yeah,
talking about. Traveled everywhere with
yeah.
them.
Always
I
had
couldn't tell
hoodie
you his name. I
on.
know exactly. Sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah,
Sweetheart of a guy. But if you cross that line with him, if he didn't know who you were and you were doing something you shouldn't be doing, he'd definitely put you in your place.
there'd be some of those security guards like, no, you can't come back here. You can't come back here. And he'd be like, no, he's good.
Yep, yep, yep. Come on, man. Come on. Yep.
So, so with you doing that stuff with Dub and them back in the day, what all did you do for them?
So I helped them out with a lot of marketing from city to city, especially like more tri-state area where I'm based, New Jersey, New York, uh, uh, Pennsylvania, down in Maryland, Connecticut. I've done, events for them. Uh,
Now,
Sometimes they don't. Mhm.
how was that Dub style market in the Northeast like that during the heyday?
Oh, it was wild, man. I mean, Dub was just wild all over the country. Um, it was just there was nothing like it. I mean, yeah, you had your Lowrider magazine, you had your stuff like that, but Dub was just. I feel like it was in a category of its own. There was nothing that was like that era. I mean, they just had everything locked in.
The vibe, the music, the performers, the
Everything.
celebrities. Like
Yep.
I hate that
Everything.
COVID shut that down. I mean, that was probably one of my favorite show series.
100%. I mean, I had really good times with it. I mean, they've let me come out to Arizona and do a dub show with them and help them out. Back in the day, I've gone to many events. I have a lot of stories that were just wild stories that we just had great times. And obviously, uh, John would call me and hey, can you do this? Can you help us out with this? Can you do that? Absolutely. There was never a time, and Mr. Ramos will tell you that if he calls me, it doesn't ring past one time. But I can't get that man on the phone to save my life.
Nope. He may reply to a text. He may reply to an email. He may not.
Oh, I had to start calling him. I had to start blocking my number for him to pick up my phone calls sometimes. You know what I mean? But I know that they're super busy, and
Oh
people
yeah.
don't realize that TIS alone there wasn't for as big as they are. There's not a lot of employees.
Nope.
It's a very small, tight knit, crew, and I think that's what has made them as successful as it is because you don't have a lot of hands and running around to people acting like a chief everywhere and not enough Indians, and they feel that everybody knows their position and what they do and where they excel and who is who, and they just wake up in the morning, do what they got to do, and keep it moving.
Yep. I know. Like I said before we come on, they gave me my first SEMA spot in 2014, and I've been with them pretty much ever since. There's a couple years I was in the South Hall lobby with a couple builds, but other than that, I was in their booth probably every year. Um,
Yeah.
it's just one of those ones like Miles even said at SEMA this year. He's like, oh, he's like, Mr. Social Media. He's like, man, he's like, you kill it for us on social media. I'm like, well, I don't even do nothing for you guys. Like, I'm just doing my own thing, but I guess they see the presence. So, that's what a lot of these companies want.
And exactly, that's what these companies want. And when you're showing like good, wholesome presence that accents their business and their company and stuff like that, that's what's huge with it. And they are one of the ones that I feel take notice the most. I mean, I go on a lot of these Instagrams, and I might not like everything, but I pay attention and I take
Yeah.
notice, and they reshare everybody's story.
100%.
They will accept a collaboration without hesitation. As long as it's not anything that's doing anything um, destructive per se,
Yeah.
they are on top of it and they have no problem. You might post something today and they'll like it and they'll comment on it, but then they'll go back and post it on theirs, in a week from now
Yep.
and give you the give you the credit for it and give you the everything for it and make sure that everybody knows who this is coming from or whose this is or anything like that, and they're on top of it on their social media game, and that's why I feel that they're as successful as they are. And I feel like they look at the blue collar end of light, people, us,
Yeah.
people in the industry, a lot harder, especially their cast line. There's not another wheel company that their cast line is as successful as TIS, right? Their Forge line is beautiful. But like we said, conversation, their main focus is on their cast line for that blue collar community.
Yep. And that's why, I had several people when I built the Tahoe this year, they're like, well, that's not a SEMA build. I was like, you don't understand. I was like, that Tahoe with that set of 24-inch wheels on it is going to sell more to the average customer than that 30-inch that I'm sitting beside with the big 30-inch forge. Like, more
Right.
people's going to buy that standard wheel, which is what they're there for at SEMA showing off anyway.
For sure. And the thing about them is with the cast line, they wanted to produce a cast wheel that looked like a forged wheel, but the price point was perfect for everybody else.
Yeah, for sure.
Because let's be honest, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, how many people could afford forged wheels?
Yep. What is it? A set of 30s with tires for a lifted truck's like what, 22 grand or something?
Yeah, I believe that back then it was. I think it's a little bit shyer now,
That
but back then it was crazy.
that's a car, not a set of wheels.
Right.
But in my mind, think $100,000 vehicle. I think of a Lambo, not a F-150. But here we are.
Exactly.
It's gotten a little crazy in that aspect.
It definitely has gotten a little nutty.
So you've had your hands in quite a few vehicle builds over the years.
Mhm.
None really high and crazy of yourself, but tell us what you've been involved in, starting with the early days until now.
So in the early days, it was a lot more of we did Nopi Nationals type builds, hot import nights type things. I mean, a buddy of mine had a Ford uh, Focus when they first came out, a two-door Ford Focus. I can remember this thing. It was like canary yellow,
Probably neon
air
lights
ride.
everywhere.
I'm sorry.
Neon lights
Oh,
everywhere.
neon lights everywhere. Yeah, I mean it was Fast and Furious all day, and suicide doors on it on the front. He had them. I mean, perfectly done, full audio, everything. So that's when I really started diving into it. I would go to the shows with him and start helping him with getting sponsorships and real. I mean, small sponsorships in the beginning. I mean, I know there was a company out there we started with, which was Stewart Gauges back in the day.
Remember that?
They were trying to go after Autometer and. They had like a silver face in them, but they had RGB style lighting in the background, so you could change it to whatever you wanted it to be. And that's one of the first companies I really dove into with getting sponsorships on and stuff like that. And then I did that for a while, and then I started really doing my own cars. I had a uh, Acura Integra, 91 Acura Integra LS that I had done two-door for myself. And then I had
91 was the wraparound headlights or the round headlights?
those were the wraparound
Yeah,
headlights.
yeah.
And I had 17-inch Koenig monsoons.
Big back
H
then.
Yeah, they were huge. And then HP exhaust out of Miami and repainted it. It was House of Colors root beer barrel brown. We had super taillights in it and stuff like that. And then I dabbled in Volkswagen GTIs and stuff of that nature. Um, got into, got a young lady pregnant at the time. Now we're going back 18 years ago. So I kind of fell back on doing anything on my own or helping anybody because I needed to focus on my daughter at the time and got back into it probably in 2014. Not that I ever left the industry, but into doing my own vehicles. And I ended up buying a 2014 Kia Optima SXL and doing 20 by 8.5s in the front, 20 by 10s in the rear, lowering it, full exhaust. It was already turboed, underdrive pulleys, changed the color from black to Audi Nardo gray.
That's
Um,
before Nardo Gray become a huge hit. As it become known,
correct.
it was SEMA
It,
Gray. Everyone
right.
did it that one year.
Yeah, and then it was funny because thanks to TIS Drop Star and Dub Magazine at the time, they would do the Philadelphia Auto Show and they would have a big a big presence there. They would have almost one floor of the convention center would be all like Dub, TIS, Drop Star, Dub IR Tint,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And they put my car in the Dub IR Tint booth that year and it got a lot of love off of it, to the point that Kia actually came down and looked at it, and the very next year they started making the K5 in Nardo Gray.
Damn.
Well, not the K5 then. It was the Kia before it was the K5. I forget the name of it. Was it the Optima? It was right after the Optima. I can't remember, but it's now called the K5 that they started doing in Nardo Gray after seeing the my Optima. Ended up blowing a turbo in it and got a new one put in. It never drove the same, so I got rid of it. And at the time is when Atlantic City Truck Meet really started.
So how did you step into doing that? Because
Oh
I guess you
God,
had no idea it would be what it is now. What was the
not
first
at all.
thing you did?
So 2 years before Atlantic City Truck Meet was born, I helped out with a show called New Jersey Truck Invasion. It was on the beach of Wildwood. The gentleman who owns it also owns a very successful Jeep event called New Jersey Jeep Invasion. Um, I was dating a girl at the time who bought. This is a funny story. So, bought an F-150. We bought it from my buddy Varner. Varn Built Motorsports. He works at a Ford dealership. Brand new 2018 Ford F-150 Lariat Sport. And when we bought it, we kind of were like, oh, let's modify it a little bit. And we did a little BDS lift on it, a set of TIS 24, set of amp tires, uh, some lighting, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Nothing crazy. And this guy started the truck show, and I called him and said, hey, I want to enter this truck in the show. He said, Mark, I don't think it's going to happen. We only have 80 trucks signed up, and we're 2 months away, and we have no vendors or sponsors. And I said, oh, wow. Well, let me help you. I've done it for Dub and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty knowledgeable in marketing. And in between those times, I did marketing. I worked for a lot of nightclubs in cities, in New York City, Philadelphia, Atlantic City. So, I mean, I kind of combined everything together. And we did it. And in 2 months, I ended up having 15 vendors. TIS titled it. Monster was there. Nitto was there.
Damn.
Um, all these companies. And we ended up doing like 860 trucks the first year
With the 2 month
within
notice.
within 2 months.
Wow.
I just reached out to the right people.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't. I was never a truck guy, right? So like for me to be able to be a part of that and get it that big, it was amazing. Um, so uh, unfortunately, the owner wasn't happy that everybody knew who I was at the show and didn't know who he was, and um, kind of let me go after the first year, and felt that he could do what I did better. um, I had companies calling me, "Hey, we'll pull out," and I said, "No, there's there's no reason. This is mine and his issue.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with you. You have a business, you have a company. You need to go. It's good for business."
Is that
And
still going on?
so so the show went on the second year. The marketing wasn't there. They lost 10 of the 15 vendors, and they lost probably about 250 of the trucks. And so we'll go right into it. It was in early June that year. I believe it was Father's Day weekend that the event was. And about a week later, I was on the phone with my business partner now, Chris Varner. One of them. We have another one. Um, and my phone. It was June 26th at about 8:30 at night. We're going back, 5 years ago. So it was a 99.
Yeah. You mean
And I'm sorry.
not 99? That's way longer than 5 years ago. 19.
Oh, I'm sorry, 19. God,
Okay,
showing my age real quick.
y'all got different math
Um,
in New Jersey or something?
yeah, my math ain't mathin'. So, my phone's just popping, text message after text message after text message. And I'm like, what is going on right now? And I basically was like, Chris, I got to call you back. And I looked, and it was screenshots of this guy basically um, permanently canceling New Jersey truck invasion. It'll never happen again. And basically blaming the participants.
What?
You guys were doing burnouts. You guys on the sand and this, that, and the third. And while the city doesn't want us here no more, and it's all your fault. Well, I kind of dug deeper into that over time, and that's not what happened. I've spoken to people from the city. I've spoken to people from the beach patrol. I've spoken, and that's not what happened. He kind of losing all those vendors and losing all those trucks. It just he didn't make any money on it, right? So, and again, as this is happening, June 26th, 8:30 at night. I'm reading this, I'm seeing it, and I called John Ramos right away. He was the first person I called because they were title sponsoring the event.
Yeah.
And I called John and I was like, yo, like, what's going on? He goes, hey, bro, I've been waiting for your call. I said, well, what happened? He goes, I don't know. It just canceled, so forth and so on. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, I wonder what's going to happen to the truck industry up here. And he's like, it's your time, man. It, it's you need to do it, and you have full support from us over here at TIS and Dropstar and at the time, Monster and all Nitto and all these guys,
Yeah.
right? So we were on the phone back and forth for the better part of about 4 hours, going over names, going over when, dates, and trying to figure a location. Finally, I said, listen, I mean, there was a bunch. It was Atlantic City, there was Atlantic City Showdown. There was Atlantic City Throwdown. There was Atlantic City this. There was New Jersey this. There was, there was just a million. The only thing that really kept sticking at me was Atlantic City Truck Meet. And we all kind of came to an agreement that that's what it should be.
Yeah.
So I literally was like, all right, this is what we're doing. Chris, I need your help. And that's Chris Varner. And he's like, he was helping me out with New Jersey Truck. He was like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? So Nick got involved. I mean, Chris got involved. And I called my graphic designer right away. He was a good friend of mine, does our websites and stuff. And I said, hey, I need a logo. I want it to look like the Vegas logo, but I want it to be different. And this is the name that I have. And he said, okay. And about 20 minutes went by, and that logo was sitting in my inbox.
That was quick.
And I was like, golly, it's exactly what I wanted. So at about 11:30 that night, we built an Instagram. We had 2,500 followers within 2 hours.
Damn.
Because we kind of attacked, not in a vicious way, the people that were making posts like, oh, it's canceled. What are we going to do? Da, 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 da. And I just felt like it is the perfect timing to do this. If we wait, we're going to lose out, right?
While it's hot.
While it's hot, let's get on it. So, we were getting messages from guys' girlfriends like, thank you so much. My boyfriend was crying and upset. And you know what I mean? It was funny. And
y'all don't have a lot of shows in the Northeast, though.
No, not like this, right? There's events out here, and they're more of your
not like you do in the Texas, Alabama. Not like there's a lot down there, but y'all even when it comes like the mini truck world, there's not been that many shows. Or I guess there's been a few import shows, but for the most part, there's not historically been a lot of big shows in the Northeast.
No, the Northeast is an untapped market. You know what I mean? So, we just ran with it, and we picked a location. I picked Bader Field right away. We kind of went over it, and it was like the biggest place we could get. And I'm like, we're gonna do it at Bader Field. We had no conversation with the city. We had nothing. Like, I'm just like literally like, okay, we're gonna do it in this month and this date. We kind of were going back and forth, and we were like, I'm posting it. What's the worst that happens? I got to change the date.
Yeah.
I was like, let's just run with this, and we ran with it, and it just it went like wildfire. We got together, and we brought in our third business partner, John Claybauer, who owns lit and lifted. So he's got the truck, he's got the side by side, so forth and so on. We're all partners with Banff LED as well now. And we brought John in and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm in, no question.
So you planned all this, then went and talked to the venue and the city about it.
Then we went to the city, right? And
You tell them, I have to do this. I've already told the world I'm doing it.
we were blatantly honest and sat in front of him, and Chris did some of the talking, and then I started talking, and I said, listen, I got to just let you guys know, we already have a location and date that, as far as anybody's concerned. I said, I can tweak the date, but I need the location. And he just laughed, and they were like, okay, well, let's see what you got. So we pitched it to them and went over things with them. And obviously, when you go to these cities and say, hey, I want to bring lifted trucks in and all this, they're kind of like, wait a second, what are you doing? So forth and so on. But as we got into it, it was, they fully supported us. And unfortunately, pandemic hit, and we were about 30 days out from our first year, and
Which was when?
which would have been 2020.
Okay.
And we were about 30 days out, and the city wasn't giving me any answers, the state wasn't giving them any answers, nobody knew which way was up. And finally, it was kind of like we all looked at each other and said, well, we got to make the executive decision, because we have companies coming from all over the country.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go past 30 days. And I said, we said, we got to cancel it. So that was actually a really hard live for me to do on Instagram.
But that time in our lives, like something we never thought would have happened. And 30 years from now, our kids are going to be like, oh my gosh, our parents had to deal with this. And the whole world was not what you expected. I planned a SEMA build that year, pulled the plug, and literally 2 weeks later, SEMA canceled. So
right. The whole world turned upside down.
Yep.
Right. So, we canceled, and I got backlash for it. It was crazy. There was a wanted poster made of me that said I was stealing people's money. And
you can't go to a restaurant and eat. What makes you think you can go have a show?
Right. So, we basically called out all of our vendors and everybody that registered at that point in time, and basically called and said, hey, we can refund you your money, or we can roll it into next year. And I would say about 98% of the people were like, roll it. We're in.
They were in
Let's
the same
go.
boat as you were, though.
I'm sorry?
They were in the same boat you were. They couldn't
For sure.
on their end.
For sure. And then you had these people that are like, oh, I want my money back, and I'll still be there next year. And I'm like, well, then why not just roll it? Whatever. And then there was people that were, oh, you're just trying to steal. I said, how am I stealing your money? It's here for next year. I can't touch it.
Yeah.
So I think it was like a gift and a curse that we got canceled our first year, because it allowed us 2 years of full marketing. That portion of it was a gift. And then going into our actual, it's our second year, but it's our first year of a show.
Yeah.
We did like 2,300 trucks and like 12,000 people.
Well, that first year after COVID, though, everybody was itching to get out. Like,
oh, they were begging.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's a show I can go to. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, and it was funny because the city was like, you got to have a 6-foot plan, and you got to have these guys wear masks. I said, listen, I'll give you the 6-foot plan, but if you think these fools are wearing masks outside, you got another thing coming to you.
Yeah.
And they were just like, out of sight, out of mind. We're just not going to look at this point. So, and it went off really well, and we've been blessed that every year it's grown. Last year we sold out. We opened up the gates at 10 a.m. and we were sold out by 1:30 on Saturday.
Did you have
in the afternoon. I'm sorry?
A bunch of pre-registration?
We do a lot of pre-reg, and then we do a lot. So I shouldn't say we do a lot of pre-reg. This is one of the problems that's wrong since the pandemic. I do some pre-reg. I would say 75% of my registrations are day of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more expensive on the day of to do it. And it's cash only, because we don't have credit card machines there. We don't have ATM machines there. We don't have that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wish people would pre-register, because obviously it helps us gauge a lot of things, as far as like how many employees to hire, how many police to get, how many this, how many that. Now we're just gauging off of years prior, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, last year we ended up at 3,800 trucks and 23,000 people.
See, I've never been one of those to pre-register for the most part. Now, big stuff like you have to for LST, you're not getting in. Mini Nats now, like you have to. But for the most part, I'm like, it may be crazy storms. I might not be able to go. Something may happen, with the kid, and I can't go. So it's hard. But 99% of the time, I still go.
Right. And it's just crazy to me that I would assume people who come from afar would pre-register, and the people who are more local are like, oh, we'll just do it the day of. It's right
Yeah.
up the street. And it's not. I get more of my pre-registrations local, and more of my day ofs are people that are coming from Florida, Texas. I have somebody who comes from Washington State every year. I have we probably have about 85 to 100 people come out of Canada.
Now, well, you're probably closer to Canada than you are me, actually.
So Canada, depending on where they're coming from, I believe the closest part of Canada for us is about 9 hours.
And how far are you from North Carolina? From say where
From
Showdown Valley's at?
let's say Maggie Valley,
Yeah,
I'm about, I think I want to say like somewhere around 11.
yeah, yeah. Because I'm 40 minutes from there. So
Gotcha.
now is there a big lifted truck market in the Northeast currently?
For sure. I mean, it's more of your basic 4 to 6 inch lifts type thing. Obviously, we get bad winters up here, depending on where you're at.
Yeah,
So, a lot of these guys do run 2 sets of wheels, or they're more of your 20 by 12 type of guys, or, not a lot of them run tens. There's a lot of trucks up this way, though, that are big builds on 28s and 30s, and,
right.
your elevate lifts, your any level, any levels right up in New York, upstate New York. So, I mean, you get guys from up there.
I remember that first year I seen them at SEMA. They're like, "Oh, we're not selling yet. We're just showing," and it was like that was
Showing,
the
yeah.
wildest thing ever.
Oh, it's insane. I mean,
And now they've
it's
blown up.
definitely the Me Too lift right now,
Yeah,
which I think is awesome for them because they built something that nobody uh, had the balls to do, right? And they said, "This is what we're going to do." Kind of sucks. They're only on one vehicle. They tried doing a Dodge, but Ford is just their forte,
yeah.
and their wheelhouse, and Aaron is crushing it over there. Aaron is one of the sweetest guys in the world as well. Great guy, great gentleman to talk to. Very much, I can pick up the phone, call him, ask him a question, and he'll pick up his personal phone on a regular basis. So
I know I like to drive a big lifted truck up in that area. Isn't fun. We went up in 2015. I had my Tundra, 15 inches of lift on 40s. And Truck Hero had a big deal up there at the stock exchange. So they transported us all up to Secaucus, New Jersey, and then drove into the city. And I remember trying to drive into the city at night in the rain in a truck that big. I thought I was going to kill somebody, run somebody over in New York City.
yeah, well, New York City is definitely not the place for larger vehicles like
No.
that, right? Maryland has its own laws. I've been impounded in Maryland, in Ocean City, just driving into the city. Uh, Maryland is a very I mean, they pull out the tape measures,
Yeah.
everything, right? It was funny. The cop pulled me over in Maryland and looked. I rolled the window down and I looked down at him and I said, "What are you pulling me over for?" And he goes, "Everything." I said, he didn't get everything out of his mouth, and a tow truck was pulling up to tow the truck.
Well, they
And I'm
had
like,
that show, the Ocean City, the import show, and like everybody there.
OC Car and Truck Show.
Yeah.
So that's what I was there for. My friends own that. It was 20 years strong. That's what I went down for, and we got whacked. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, good lord!
Yeah.
But yeah, OC Car and Truck Show was one of my first like major events that I went to, and I became very good friends with Brad and Brian, Brian Sturr and B Rad. And Brian left it, and B Rad took it over fully, and I still talk to B Rat to this day, man. He still calls me and wishes me luck every year. And I'm so proud of you, what you came up with. You needed to do something, and this was your niche. And to get into that funny story, I said I was going to say that. Needless to say, that black F-150 uh, Lariat Sport that my ex bought is sitting in my driveway because she broke her back and I went and bought it off her. So I've had that truck pretty much since 0 miles.
Nice. Well, thinking like you looking down at the cop and stuff. I know when we went up to New York, I want to say it was Sean from Complete Customs was driving one of his trucks. Like
Mhm.
when we left the stock exchange, so one of those things like they were releasing their IPO, canceled it last minute. We all drove back to the hotel. Like we were just going to park them overnight and be there for the opening bell and all that. Well, they canceled it, went back to the hotel, and it was, we all got separated. And I think if Sean went to change lanes and basically NASCAR walled somebody's car with the 40, the whole side of it, and the cop showed up and was like, well, how didn't you see them? And he was like, climb in that driver's seat. And he said the cop climbed up in there and shut the door and went, totally understand now. And it was like a 15-inch lift.
And you got to realize that New York is narrow. You know what I mean? They
Oh,
built that
yeah.
a long time ago. So it's definitely, like I said, it's not even built for 18-wheelers to go through there to drop off product to these restaurants and stores. And, that's why there's a lot of small
Box
Mitsubishi
trucks.
type box
Yeah.
trucks. Yep.
Well, I know
Yep.
we went
Yep.
through the tunnel. I remember seeing the sign that said 8 foot wide from the little concrete curb to the plastic pole. And I'm like, that's 96 inches. It's like, I'm 94 inches sidewall to sidewall. And I'm trying to go through that tunnel, white knuckling it the whole time, trying to keep
Oh, yeah. And you feel at that point that your steering wheel's moving when it's really
Oh,
not.
yeah.
And you're like,
I have drove tractor trailers most of my life because I worked for Pepsi for most of my life.
okay.
That is the most scared I've ever been driving in my life, was going through the tunnel in that lifted truck.
I used to get yelled at by John and Miles of how I was able to curb so many wheels.
Are you female?
And it explains. Well, no, come on. It explains it. These tight roads that are up here.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I've been really good with my last couple of sets of wheels that we haven't had this problem at all in a few years. So we're doing good.
I remember there's one day when I was at Pepsi, I drove to Pepsi. I only live like 2 miles away, and it was snowing. And it was like, well, y'all just stay here to see if we can go. And it got too bad for the trucks to go out. But, y'all drive back home. So I drove home, and my little Honda Accord, staggered 20s on it, straight into a curb. I remember it was the first wheel I'd ever curbed. I called up Miles, like, so I have a problem. He goes, just tell me which wheel you need. Like,
There
I've
was a
never
time when I curbed
curbed a wheel.
my the wheels that I had on my Optima, and I didn't even tell him. And I think I posted a picture, and I got a text message right away and said, text John what it is, and we'll get overnight you out a new one.
I always joke because when I detail cars and stuff now, and I'd say 90% of the female cars that I have come in, there's at least one curbed wheel on them, every one of them. So I guess
I'm going to stay away from that. I'm going to let you handle that one.
that's why once we put the wheels on the Tahoe, the wife was not allowed to drive it till I got it back from SEMA.
There you go.
I'm like, nope, got it back. She drove it to work one day dirty, and then I washed it and took it to Showdown in the Valley. I'm like, okay, now you can drive it. Like,
And how are the wheels?
they're still fine. Oh, she
Okay,
won't
good.
go through drive-throughs. She parks at the end of the parking lot. She takes a spot and a half up at work. Like
Learned her lessons.
oh yeah,
Learned her lessons.
she got
Yep.
one door ding, and I'm like, yep, that's it. And ever since then, this was years ago. Ever since then, she's at the end of the parking lot somewhere. And she goes, I'd rather walk than have you yell at me.
Yeah, hey, it costs money.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
She the last car she had before we got the Tahoe, she had a Acura TLX, and her mom and sister went to some concert or something. She pulled into the parking deck and curbed one of her wheels, and her mom and sister were like, what's no big deal. I mean, it was a set of Motive 20s on it. They're still aftermarket wheels. And her mom and sister was like, that's no big deal. She goes, you don't understand. I would rather tell my husband I totaled the car, so at least he would ask if I was okay, than I would curb a wheel. So
that is the truth, man.
yep.
That's good. I like that.
I mean, we traded that probably about a month after that. That wasn't the reason we traded it, but it helped.
Right.
So
For sure.
that's when we picked up the Tahoe. But so back to the truck show though.
Yeah.
It's something you do every year since
Yes, sir.
21 would be the first time.
21 was our first official year doing the event, correct?
So you have it scheduled for 25 already?
25, June 7th and 8th. We opened up, vendor registration has already been open since Black Friday, and vehicle registration opens up on New Year's Day.
So where is the show?
It is in at Bader Field. It's on an old abandoned airfield of 146 acres, surrounded by water with the Atlantic City skyline as your backdrop. It's in Atlantic City, New Jersey, uh, and it's a wild place. Very good views, especially for photography. Our
I've seen the
photographers,
picture.
videographers that come there, the backdrops and stuff like that, they love it.
So is it open to everything or just trucks?
So it's all truck. I mean, truck, Jeep, lifted, lowered, side by side, big rigs, stuff like that. So we do not. I mean, we don't do cars. Cars are a no for us. I mean, in the name itself, it's a truck meet.
Then you have like mini truck and nationals that's open to everything. So that's why I wasn't sure what.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, we really wanted to stay true to what it was. Um, Ramos brought a Lamborghini one year, about 2 years ago,
Probably
and
Calvin.
put it in his booth. No, it was somebody else. It was one of Calvin's guys, the body shop guys,
Yeah.
and put it in his drop star booth. And I rode over there on my golf cart and said, "What is this?" And he started laughing, and I'm like, "Never again." And he was like, "You're serious right now, aren't you?" I'm like, "I'm dead serious." So the next year when I got on the phone with him, I was like, "No cars." He said, "No, I know. I learned my lesson. No cars, no cars."
Well, the front end
So
air is up. Does that not count?
no. We try to keep true because the problem is the minute we start getting any cars that are in there, then all the car guys are going to want to get involved in. It's a it becomes a messy situation. If at that point, could you imagine? I'm already doing 3,800 trucks, and then I get cars involved. I, I won't be able to do it.
Now, are you tapped out on space at that point?
So last year we had an area mapped out last year. We got approval from the city for a helicopter ride.
Oh, wow.
So we mapped out this area, correct amount of space, landing pad, everything. And about a week before the event, the city called us and said, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're not going to approve you for it. So I'm like, we're all sitting here with our hands in the air, like we've been promoting it. We've been telling people want to go. Like, what are we going to do?
Well, now you just do
So,
drone rides this year.
right, yeah, I know, right? Just grab on and that space that we had marked off, it closed for last year. We kind of kept it closed because we didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And then after the show, Chris kind of said, "Hey, why don't we open that up for Showfield? We'll do a gold Showfield over there or platinum or whatever it may be, and it'll be a little bit less expensive." So we opened up a space for another 1,000 vehicles.
Wow.
So 3,800 trucks last year. Our goal is obviously we'd like to hit around that 5K marker.
And there's not a lot of shows in general that pull those kind of numbers, especially when you do just trucks. I think Dino's is probably the only one that can say,
Oh, Dino's.
yeah, they're just GM.
They're in a category of their own too. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like I've always admired Dino's. I've always wanted to go to Dino's. I haven't had the opportunity.
I went
Brian
this year.
from Brian's Motorsports was trying to drag me out there this year, but he told me that next year if I don't go, he's going to beat me with a noodle. So
Well, I actually stayed in Vegas for an extra week with the guy that's building the K5 for next year. Stayed at his house for a week, and then we rode to Dino's like 4 hours away or whatever.
Yeah, that's what they were telling me.
Yeah, then he rode back with me. So, so I didn't have to drive back across the country by myself. But I mean, we spent all day Friday. I don't think we ever left the vendor area on Friday. Like, it's massive. Like
I thought we had a lot of vendors. We do about 160 vendors. I'm sure that their vendors is insane.
I think when I wrote the article for C10 Builders Guide, I want to say it was like 240 something vendors, almost 250. But I mean, it's not just like a bunch of 10 by 10s. It's like Hills Hot Rod has their rig, Fat Fender Garage has their rig.
Yep.
Like, it's rigs there, not just booths. So
right, and that's what we're starting to tap into. I mean, Toyo showed up last year with their big rig. We have a couple other companies that are coming out this year bringing their rigs in, which is awesome. I mean, the really cool thing about our show is a lot, and I would say about 30% of our show is all that truss
Yeah.
set up. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it looks great. And then one of our requirements is you have to, if you have a booth and you're bringing a tent, it has to be a branded tent. I don't want a Walmart blue top tent sitting there. We're trying to do this as professional as possible and make this as legit as possible. And I feel that we've been successful at it. And so we do have requirements as far as being a vendor, and as far as like how you set up and what you can set up and stuff like that.
Well, you've been in this almost as long as I have, and you've seen the change. Back in the day, a booth was a 10 by 10 Walmart tent, that and a banner hanging on the back. Like we didn't have branded tents back then. Like I want to do one for the podcast, but I'm like, do I really want to pay for that? Then pay to set up at a show just to record? Like I don't make nothing off this. It's like,
Right.
I've honestly priced the tent set up, and it's like I'd love to do it, but it's like that's a big commitment because if you spend a few $100s on that booth setup, then you got to pay to get to the show. You got to pay to be in the show.
Yep. Well, there's opportunity. I mean, you could sell ads to these companies and stuff like that. I mean, it could possibly work out for you at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's something that I may dive into in 25 because I've always done the in the office setup like this recording, but I've done a few in the cars. I've done, a couple testing stuff out. And I'm like, okay, cool. I have a way that I can do it remotely. I don't have to be in the office. So it's like, maybe I need to do that. So
right.
That
I think it's great.
Might be my 2025 goal. So,
well, if you do it, if you get on the road and you start doing it, I definitely want to be in that tent one time and doing that, an off-site face-to-face interview too.
Cool. So tell the people how they find your show information and keep up with what's going on.
So the best way for us is to register hotel room discounts, spectator passes, vendor registration, anything of that nature. You go to www.atlanticcitytruckmeet.org.
Okay.
And then to keep up with us, Instagram, Atlantic City Truck Meet. That is the best way to keep up with anything that's changing, new announcements. When we release our maps for load in, when we release our show schedule as far as what we have going on throughout the day and stuff like that, and that other announcements that we have, that is the best and easiest way to do so. Of course, it travels over to Facebook, but we've noticed that a lot of the truck industry guys are on Instagram more than they are on the Facebook end of it.
They're not all old guys like we are. They're a lot of the younger.
We've noticed truck guys are IG, Jeep guys are Facebook. So,
really?
Yeah.
Well,
yep.
Well, where would you classify like the C10 guys? Are they kind of like the MySpace guys? Like, what are we at that group?
I mean, probably early AOL dial up with the guy running across the, you know what I mean? What chat room is that? You know what I mean?
Yep. We was all Street Source back in the day. That was one of the big chat rooms. So,
yep.
Well, you have anything cool planned for the show this year that you've not done in the past?
Yeah. Can't tell you.
Other than
I'm just
rides.
Waiting to sign a couple of contracts with with Monster, and they're great with us. They have this whole list of celebrities and stunt riders and people that they sponsor that they use to their ability to bring out. So there's a couple things that they have in the works right now, and hopefully just after the first of the year we can sit down on the phone call and get everything ironed out, and once that's done, start announcing stuff like that. But really cool stuff that hasn't been at our event yet, and they're just so supportive of it, and I've dealt with them for probably the better part of about 15 or so years.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on. I know we've been back and forth. Seems this time of year is hard with everybody's work schedule and everybody's trying to wrap up into the year stuff and all that. So glad to have you on, that you wasn't hauled off by one of those alien drones, and
I'll be here. I promise. They ain't coming for me.
They'll pick you up and go, "Nah, we're going to put him back."
They're like, "We're not going to fat nap this guy. Don't worry about it."
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll keep an eye on.
Appreciate you having me. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, man.